Now that we have a basic understanding of what a class is and how Unity allows us to drag and drop scripts onto objects, let's look at how we can actually get our current position as well as update it. Now looking at our player, we have three components. We have a transform component, a sprite renderer component, and our player component. Anything I write in this player script will be affected on the object it sits on. So for instance, I'm going to go ahead and say here, debug.log start is called. Now, the reason why start will even get called to begin with is because it is on the player game object. So when we run this, it will indeed say start is called. As you can see here in the console view, start is called. Now what happens now if I were to add this player class to the main camera? Now I have a player class on my player as well as the main camera. How many times is our start method going to be called? Let's go ahead and clear on play. When we run this, the start method is now going to be called twice. As you can see here, there's a 2 next to it. If I remove the collapse, start is called, start is called. So basically what's happening is now the main camera as well as our player game object both have the behavior of our player, and anything we write is applied to those objects individually. What if I wanted to print out the name of the object we're on? If we look at the player, we have a player component. I can get the name of this object. If we're on the main camera, I can get the name of this object. So here's how we can do that. Instead of start is called, let's go ahead and type out name with a colon and hit hit space, and then you can append a name using the plus sign. So let's go ahead and say name, and then we want this name. So how can I get it? I can simply just type name. Name is provided as a Unity, you can think of it as a Unity term that we can use because of mono behavior. So go ahead and save this. And now when debug.log name is called, whoever has this script attached to them, it's going to print out their name. So let's go ahead and test that out. You'll see now that it's going to print out the main camera as well as player. And here you go, name main camera, name player. Alright, so that's important to remember that these scripts act as behaviors, and whatever object this script is on is the object we're affecting with these behavior scripts. So let's remove our player from the main camera. And let's go ahead and get our position. Let's go and get specifically, I want the X value of our player position. So right now I'm going to go ahead and move our player to the left a bit. So our position is about -3.3. Let's go ahead and set it to -3. I want to print out the X position. Unity works in a very hierarchical structure. Now what that means is that if I'm on the player game object, this script is already on the player. How do I get to the position? I first have to access the transform, then the position, then the value I want. So here's what that looks like through code. Let's go ahead and print out the X position. So we'll go ahead and say debug.log xpose, and we'll go ahead and say transform, because I'm getting the transform component of whatever object the script is attached to. I'm going to say dot to get the position, and then I want to say dot again to go further in to get the X value. And we'll go ahead and close that. Notice I did transform.position.x. The reason why that's so important is because that was the steps and process it actually takes to visually get there as well. I'm on the player. I go to the transform.position.x. If I want the Y value, I would say .y, or the Z value .z. To get the rotation, I would do transform.rotation.x.y.z. You can think of the dot as a progression. The dot allows us to move further inside of those components to get information. So by running this, it will now print out -3 in the console because that's our X position. You can see xpose -3. So we can get our current position. Now how can we assign it? So let's go ahead and see what happens if we just do transform.position. Let's go ahead and remove this message here. What happens if we just debug.log transform.position? You'll see here in the console that it prints out -3 for the X, 0 for the Y, and 0 for the Z. What this is called a vector 3. You can think of a vector 3 as a position variable type. Anytime you're dealing with position, rotation, or scale, you're typically going to work with a vector 3. right? And it makes sense why it's called a vector 3 because you have 3 values. Now, what we do here is, or what we're currently doing here is we're grabbing the current position of our player, which is transform dot position. So what we want to do, essentially, is if we were to write out some pseudocode, is take the current position equals new position. Now, the reason why I'm saying new position is because we're doing just that. We're going to take the current position, which is transform.position, and we're going to assign it a new position. Now, how do I know what the syntax to assign to this position is? Well, if we look at our tooltip here, by typing transform.position, you'll see here that the position is of type vector3, and it has these getter and setter methods here. It says get and set. That means I can get the position as well as I can set the position. So anytime you see a set like that, it means that you can assign it using the equal sign. So I can say transform.position equals, and then you can specify a new position using the new keyword. And remember, a position is a vector 3. So transform.position equals a new vector 3. And if I retype that vector 3, the tooltip says representation of 3D vectors and points. If you open a parenthesis, you can specify 3 individual float axes. So we're going to go ahead and say 0, 0, and 0. And if we go ahead and save that, head back to Unity, on my screen we're going to get an error right now. And the reason why we are is because it says semicolon expected. If you double click it, it will take you to the line, and go ahead and add a semicolon. Save this, head back to Unity, and what's going to happen now is when we hit play, our player is going to have a new starting position. So there you go. He's over here on the left. We hit play, snaps to the center. Now, just off of that one line of code, you can already imagine how a teleportation system in one of your favorite games work. You walk into that teleportation device. How do you change the player's position? You get the current position and you assign it a new position. It's that simple. In the next video, we're going to look at how we would move our character and then apply some user inputs.